My fellow Sadza eaters, welcome back to your home of reliable content where we marinate you with verified information. So, on Christmas Day, the Zimbabwean president, His Excellency Mnangagwa, announced that he is doing a performance review of his cabinet and will soon reshuffle it. A move which in theory will see several underperforming ministers losing their jobs. That is good news, right? Well, in theory it is. I say in theory because when it comes to President Mnangagwa, things are not always as they seem, especially at this point where he is seeking to outmaneuver his political opponents in his clandestine bid for a third term, where he acts like he doesn't want it during the day but Nicodemously plots for it under the cover of darkness. Almost everything the Zimbabwean president is doing points to one thing, and that is a consolidation of power. He doesn't look or indeed act like a man who will hand over power in 2028. He has even banned ZANU-PF members from discussing succession and unsurprisingly hasn't banned anyone from supporting his 2013 Chipo project. The very fact that the topic of succession has been banned in ZANU-PF tells you that ED feels threatened. We really should be happy that our president is thinking about removing underperforming ministers, except when you dig deeper, you realize that there is a bigger plot to the story. If it was about removing underperforming ministers, most cabinet members of ED's government would have been gone by 2023. The issue here is that Babama Twins is laying the groundwork for a possible referendum. Well, referendums. He has been consolidating power for this cause since 2018. It can't be easy to give up power after only 2 terms when your predecessor, Mugabe, was in power for 6 terms. That's 37 years. Especially if you were his chief enforcer in those 37 years. You do realize that President Mnangagwa literally doesn't know life outside politics, right? I mean, he entered into politics as a young guerrilla trained under ZAPU before the 1963 ZAPU split. He was then arrested and jailed and narrowly escaped execution on a technicality because he was underage. After getting released, he was deported to Zambia, where he later rejoined the liberation struggle in 1977 after completing his law degree. So, from 1977 until this day, Mnangagwa has been in active politics at the highest level. That's 47 years of an eventful life in politics. In those 47 years, he has been the boss of intelligence in ZANU, Minister of State Security, which made him a boss of the CIO, Minister of Justice, Speaker of Parliament, Minister of Defense, Vice President, and finally, after staging a coup d'etat in 2017, a president. After becoming president, most of the army generals who helped him remove Mugabe started dying. One by one, they fell by the wayside, including the coup announcer, S.B. Moyo, and the infamous 5th Brigade commander, Perence Shiri, who had risen to become Air Force commander before being retired after the coup. In 2019, ED further retired 4 top generals, including Douglas Nyikayaramba, the guy who refused to salute Prime Minister Tsvangirai, and Anselm Sanyatwe, the guy who commanded the army during the 2018 Harare CBD shootings. In circumstances that still remain unclear, Mnangagwa would later bring back Sanyatwe from retirement and made him ZNA commander. A few months ago, Sanyatwe famously or infamously said that ZANU-PF ichatonga kushika madongi amera nyanga. ZANU-PF will be in power until donkeys grow horns. So, from the time Sanyatwe was retired to the time he was brought back as ZNA commander, the death toll of ZDF commanders kept increasing. And it still is. And some of the deaths just can't be explained. And throughout these happenings, well, I'm just going to call them happenings for lack of an appropriate term. So, throughout these happenings, Mnangagwa has continued to redeploy, reshuffle and retire his generals with a frequency never before seen in the history of the ZDF. Early this year, the Air Force commander Elson Moyo was retired, curiously shortly after a bomb threat which forced Mnangagwa to cancel his Victoria Falls trip. In October, the same guy, Elson Moyo, was involved in a car accident and narrowly escaped death. All these happenings suggest that Mnangagwa is consolidating power by removing anyone he sees as a potential threat to his grand plan. ED knows too well that he has many enemies in the system. Remember, in 2018, he narrowly escaped death in an assassination attempt at a rally in Bulawayo. This is what in part prompted him to make so many changes in the ZDF command structure, so he's putting those he thinks are solidly behind him and his grand plan for a life presidency. So, what is the significance of a cabinet reshuffle in the grand scheme of things? Well, as we all know, Cabinet is a forum of ministers which decides and shapes government policy. In actual terms, Cabinet runs government business on behalf of the President. The official function of Cabinet, as laid out by our national constitution, is to prepare, initiate and implement national legislation, to develop and implement national policy, and of course, to advise the President. So, cabinet ministers are the eyes and mouth of the president. They are the hands and legs of the president. We are nearing 2025. We have only 3 years left before the next scheduled elections in 2028. In order for Mnangagwa to go through with his third term bid, he must do 2 referendums. 2 separate referendums. First, to remove the current 2-term limit in the constitution, and then secondly, to remove the clause which disqualifies him from benefiting from that term limit extension. You see, the way the current constitution was written is such that a person can only be president for 2 terms, that is 10 years. However, if you amend the constitution to extend the term limit to more than 2 terms, that term limit extension does not benefit a sitting president or anyone who has previously served as president. That term limit extension will only benefit future presidents. You see, the purpose of this clause was to make it totally unappealing for sitting presidents to extend their stay in office. Yet, here we are. If you remove a presidential term limit or extend it because you have a performing president and you want him to remain in office and continue performing, well, that sounds good, but what happens when that good president finally dies and is replaced by an underperforming president, a power-hungry president who will take advantage of that term limit extension and inflict untold suffering on the general population? What happens then? Constitutions are there to protect us from ourselves. We know not what we shall become in the future. Maximilien Robespierre and his comrades started well in the French Revolution, but they ended up becoming worse than the king that they had removed from power. No president should be too good for us to have to amend the constitution for him to remain in power. Yet, here we are. ZANU-PF is going to amend the constitution and remove the current 2-term limit through a referendum, after which they will come back again and ask you and me to vote in a referendum to remove the clause which disqualifies Mnangagwa from benefiting from that constitutional amendment. So, in order for this process to go smoothly, the whole system must be pro-ED. All arms of state must be 100% pro-ED. And most importantly, the military must be pro-ED. So that explains all the reshuffling, redeployment, retirement, reinforcement, recalibration and regalvanization of all state institutions and arms of government. Just recently, the police commissioner, Matanga, was retired and replaced with this guy, Stephen Mutamba, ED Avaskutamba. In 2021, Chief Justice Malaba was allowed to continue in office despite reaching retirement age, which tells you that Malaba is a huge asset to Mnangagwa. Ladies and gentlemen, the plan to extend President Mnangagwa's term in office is in motion. The groundwork is being laid. Why do you think influential people are being pampered with expensive cars left, right and center? It's because of the two referendums. These are the celebrities that ZANU-PF will use to campaign for ED's third term. They know that Zimbabwe has Mbinga syndrome. Have you noticed that every time Wikno Chivayo gives out cars, he does it in the name of ED, not in the name of ZANU-PF per se? It's always 2030 Anenga Chipo, because that is the project. Pamper all people of influence with cars and money, and get them to swear their allegiance to ED if you can. Make it so that all young people will now all of a sudden want to associate themselves with the 2030 Anenga Chipo project in the vain hope of getting freebies and goodies and cars. And so, in the absence of a vibrant opposition and an apathetic opposition support base, all of a sudden, the referendum route seems very appealing for ED. Why do you think the opposition was neutralized in parliament? It was to clear the way for a ZANU-PF 2/3 majority, which it needs to amend the constitution before putting that amendment before us to vote in a referendum. It's all part of the grand plan. All the changes being made by ED are in preparation of that grand plan. He is laying out the groundwork. The question is, can he be stopped? Can we as citizens stop him? Well, of course we can, but we won't. Because we are divided, we are weak, and we are all cowards. All of us without exception. Some of us are easily swayed by money and flashy things. Young people don't have a generational consensus on what needs to be done going forward, and the opposition is sleeping. Everyone is folding their arms and waiting for Chamisa to work magic. That makes Chamisa a single point of failure. And those who blame Chamisa for being too soft don't want to do anything brave themselves. The end result is that ZANU-PF gets to score free kicks and no one is guarding the goal. So, if ED has done his homework with the military, then he might just pull this off, If we as a country allow ED to go through with his plan, then be rest assured that he will become a president for life. Do not be fooled. Take this from me. It's not about 2030. It's about a life presidency. The only thing that will be able to remove him after that will be death or a coup d'etat, just like his predecessors, Sithole and Mugabe. But whatever happens, I'll be here to marinate you with all the details without fear or favor, because on this platform, we say it as it is. And as always, thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoy the content, please like and share.